Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The drama between Scrappy and other players in the CDL continues. This time he's calling out Purj of the Las Vegas Legion. They played in a series just the other day. Purj was shooting bodies to insides. Then of course they went on to lose the series. And Scrappy certainly has some comments for you in terms of how his numbers are looking so far this season. Very much interested your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Ben's reaction, I gotta say too, when the production were kind of trolling him was good to see. I thought it was pretty funny, right? People were roasting Ben for being too soft about this, and I totally get it. But I don't know. I think Ben's coming around. I think at some point you've got to own it, right? And I think Ben will own it. It's going to be difficult to live down that cliff, but we know how it goes. Now, I did want to mention this that I haven't really seen too many other people talk about here from Adamu of the Toronto Ultra. As he says the other day here, we're beginning to work on unifying our global brands. We've hired one of the best agencies in the world to do it. One brand, one team, one world, no limits, and all this stuff. So, this is, I guess, the plan. Reaching out to fans for input. This is, this includes Overactive Media is the overall thing. They've got Mad Lions, they've got like Movistar, KOI, they've got Toronto Ultra. That's what it says in his bio, so I'm just reading it off. And they've got Toronto Defiant as well. Now, this also is the organization involved in Splice, right? Previously, it's kind of still Splice in some respects, but, they sunset that brand. Mad Lions kind of took over. But the plan is to combine everything together, as you can see in this brilliant graphic here between all the different brands that they have. What does this mean, of course, for the Call of Duty League side? Just because the understanding is there are questions being raised right now behind the scenes as to what the future of the league is going to be. Maybe exacerbated by the Hex Scum lawsuit. I'll be honest, I expected at this time of this season, February, March time of the season, to hear conversations happening around the future of the league, because we know what's happened in the Overwatch League. And I'm sure the feeling is of some of the teams that we need to switch away from this model, or at least change something in the structure of the league to make this work in the long term. And I feel like that is to some degree inevitable. But I guess the question would be, is there going to be cities? Are cities going to stay? Is it still going to be Toronto-based, the Toronto Ultra? What exactly are they going to do over there going forwards? Because Toronto as an organisation are very much committed to the future of CoD. There's no doubt about that. They will stay around in CoD to the best of my knowledge. Of course, they're hosting an event, very excited for, in a couple of months' time yet again. So they've done a great job for CoD. And I do hope that, let's say the CDL disappears and the city-based thing never exists anymore, which I think is probably for the better. I do still hope that the teams maintain some sort of local feel, because, let's say it just becomes Ultra and that's their new brands, and they get rid of Toronto and everything like this in the brand name, because the league moves away from a city-based franchise structure. They could still very much easily host events in Toronto and still be based out of Toronto, but just they wouldn't necessarily have that city tied to them officially as a franchise. And then if they wanted to host events, they could still do, the Ultra hosted events in Toronto, but it wouldn't necessarily be the Toronto home event as it were. So I don't really know, but I thought this might be somehow related, that Toronto and the organisation behind it are considering merging all their brands into like one umbrella name, and yet that umbrella name is probably unlikely to have a city in it because it seems too restrictive, which maybe makes me question exactly what's going to happen to the CoD League over the next 6 months or so, because I'm sure conversations on that are going to be happening on what we've seen recently enough. Now, this was David Vonderhaar's update. I really don't know what it is, but he tweeted out this link here, and if you go on the link, it just takes you to this website here with some sort of barn. So I really don't know what he's cooking, but possibly not a COD project, I imagine, even though what we saw the other day could have implied it. What do you guys think as well about the whole Grayster thing? Because Scrappy was getting into it with Clay at the start of the season over this type of stuff, but Clay also was getting similarly kind of frustrated that the league keeps calling him like the oldest man of all time, and I think it's kind of nice. I know that Aches mentioned it on the flank yesterday, that when you're the oldest player in the league, you've got to own it, right? And the commentators are going to talk about it all the time because they do in other sports as well, which is, I guess, expected, to be fair. And it is certainly a thing in other sports as well, when, if the oldest player, the oldest driver, the oldest whatever, like, they always talk about, how old they are and how, they're near the end of their career and all this type of stuff. And I think it's kind of expected. But as Clay says, I've had friends watch the broadcast and ask me why they keep roasting me. Can you guys cut me some slack? So, I don't know. There were some theories of whether he's just trying to get back here at Nameless. But it feels like Clay is at least somewhat, well, believes that they should talk less about his age, which I don't think is probably true, to be fair, but I think it's kind of like a natural thing that happens. I get that it's a unique thing, but bringing it up every now and again is fine, but straight up every time I'm on screen, they're talking about it. It did remind me of this tweet, which I just thought was so good from last year that I bookmarked it, because every so often you talk about this stuff. Here comes the oldest player in the history of the league, truly an aging veteran, the old guard. It's a miracle he is still alive. Of course, to be fair, Clay is 31 rather than 24, but, you know, this probably applies to, like, Rocket League or something, I don't know, because over there the players are just so young. There's also been some serious complaints about the state of the game in general. Nadeshot did another post here. He's been going off about this over the last couple of days, and I totally get it, right? If you guys are playing ranked consistently, especially in the higher ranks, you're going to run into cheaters all the time. The players get frustrated about it for good reason. It's always difficult to say whether somebody on the other side actually is cheating or not, because you don't get to see their POV, the theatre mode, the anti-cheat. It doesn't really work as well as it should have done. So as Nade says, cheating in a video game was always an issue, but now we're in a straight up new era. Sometimes they're not even detectable on a PC check. The monitor cam isn't even good enough really to do the job. I think even back in Cold War, I remember seeing some video of, there was some guy using a wall hack, but all it was a few tiny little pixels in the bottom left hand side of the screen. So it was almost like he had a minimap in the bottom left corner of the screen, but there was no minimap or anything. It was just the dots where the other team were, and they would rotate as he rotated. And the pixels were so small, he could see them on his screen, because they were just small little dots that would move around and tell him where the enemies were. But on a monitor cam, which was a little bit further away, the quality wasn't quite good enough. You couldn't even really see those dots or tell there was anything happening there. So, you know, even from that side, it's tough to stop any of this, and, you know, the feeling is that the anti-cheat needs to be more invasive, or whatever you want to say. They've got to do something about it, whether they care, whether they think people play the game anyway, maybe, but I think that's only a matter of time until it really has big consequences. The feeling as well is that, especially for challenges next year, return to console might well be necessary, and if I was, you know, one of these organization owners, I'd be having that discussion right about now. Scrap was also talking about the state of the game as well, because, you know, last night, again, the sub-base, the Invasion P4 is actually comedy. I do feel like with Invasion P4, the fact that they just keep spawning Palace again and again and again, and there's no way you could really stop it seems, you can actually kind of prepare for it, because what you want to do is set up the situation where you spawn Palace, you then shoot the guys in the back, then you know they're going to spawn Palace, so you can turn around and trap them in. That's kind of what we saw in yesterday's series. You almost can prepare for it. Like, the spawns are terrible, but if you know they're going to happen, you can play around it to some degree, whereas on sub-base, and to be fair, Invasion as well, like, there's crazy spawns in that you can't predict. But on Subbase and even Skid Row, you get some weird spawns. And, well, Prolit says these spawns, game is unplayable right now, says Scrappy. But, you know, have we heard updates from Sledgehammer that they're trying to address this? I don't really think so. I think their plan was drop the game, drop a big update in January, which they did, which has arguably made the game worse. I don't know what you guys think about that one. And then say, okay, it's done now. But according to the pros, it's totally not done now. And Donny Temp says you got to have 99 comms right now. It's chalked. But to be fair, is this not a good thing, right? Maybe a bit of a skill gap in communication is good. But I do agree that, as Scrappy says, not one team looks like they 100% know what's going on. And I don't know, maybe there's a feeling that over the last couple of weeks, at the start of the game, shall we say, the best teams were slamming the worst teams. Like, going through Major 1, how many 3-0s did we have? Like, the better teams would just slam the worst teams every single time, no doubt about it. And there was a clear, and there still is, a very clear skill gap in the league. I mean, we've seen this every single match that is played. But to be fair, there is maybe a feeling that the games are getting closer over the last couple of weeks, whether that's because the teams are getting better, like the lower teams, such as Vegas, competing with Toronto pretty well in the series, or whether that's the fact that the game is a bit more random now, difficult to read, and therefore you naturally get some closer series, in the same way that in Vanguard or in MW2, Florida or these teams would often come out with some sort of upset win. They weren't very good, but they would get an upset win and they would think they were good, and therefore they wouldn't make a change, and then eventually they would when they realised that it wasn't going to work out. So anyway, Purj. But speaking of a series like Toronto versus the Vegas Legion, this I thought was really interesting during the series, right? Of course, Purj goes down 1-0. He gets the kill on Insight, shoots him in the back here as Insight tries to clutch a 1v3. And as you can see here, a few more bullets go into the body after he's already dead. So that was causing a bit of a stir at the time. We didn't really talk about it in too much depth, but of course, this was noted by the guys on the flank and of course by Scrappy as well. And Scrap gave his thoughts on the matter because Purj, if there's any man to shoot bodies and, well, get roasted for it, Purj is one of the most obvious candidates.
Insight's got to get a bad time.
But not with Purj.
Oh, Purj shot his body too? Oh, I would have tweaked. And why Purj? Why do it?
But you can't shoot champion body.
Wait, did he actually shoot his body?
He gave him a little love tap, but it was like a troll one, like got your ass. Like if you're just unloading on someone, that's disrespectful. But if he's like in an absolute cred spot and kills you and gives you like a burst, you're like,
just falls into his lap. So
that's some horseshit.
I did tweet him and say 0.4.
Kid as well. That's where the has the most experience and showing off some of the.
You can't shoot bodies yet.
It was close. Yo, why is this guy shooting bodies, by the way? Yeah, so Purj did shoot bodies. What were your thoughts?
Like,
you don't average a 0.7.
I'll be honest, all the body shot into the highlight. Also, bend their tongue.
I don't mind the body shooting. At least his mental's not chalked. His gun is chalked right now.
Bro, I hope we turned him heel.
Mental's good right now.
Turn him.
That'd be good. That'd be good. That might be good for him.
We need more heel players in the league.
Scrap, I like the body shot, to be honest with you, Will. You know, it was Purj shooting your body. It was Purj. It was Purj. What? Did you feel some type of way that it was Purj shooting your body?
He didn't shoot my body. I just heard about it after. And I'm like, wow.
He was shooting Insight's body. He shot his body in a pinch. Which, hey, man, hey, you can't be shooting Jamie's body, man. It's the Iceman. Is Jamie one of the new Icemans or what? He's got to be.
He is the Iceman. He is the Iceman. He's been the Iceman.
Oh,
he's been that since he's
we
been
calling
in the
shitty players Iceman. Jamie Insight's the Iceman.
My bad, Lamar.
Damn, what the fuck? Yo, what the fuck, Scrap?
What do you mean by that?
Lamar's Iceman.
So is he right that you shouldn't be shooting bodies if your KD isn't especially good? I'm not really sure I buy it. I don't buy it. Just shoot bodies as much as you want as far as I'm concerned. I think it's good entertainment. I also think people get a bit too, like, the players do get kind of tight about it, don't they? Get your body shots. They don't tend to be so happy. I mean, maybe Insight didn't care, but Scrappy wasn't maybe so happy on behalf of Insight that this was going on. But you got to say to Purj, Vegas controversially decided to keep him in the team. I mean, when the room was coming out that Stanley was gone and Gio was in, there were people calling this like the worst roster change ever, like what's going on, and it's clearly not proven to be the case. Now, the numbers still indicate that Purj isn't having a great time. I mean, KD, Slayer rating, etc, etc. But to be fair, this is the entire season, and when you look at their recent games, tells a bit of a different story. I mean, it's not like he's been frying, shall we say, but I mean, I guess we can just have a look at the qualifiers they've played so far here in Major 2 against the Los Angeles Grillers. He went, 0.93 KD. And let's remember, he was on the SMG here most of the time, 0.91. And then the most recent series, he had a 0.91 again. So, like, he's gone from a 0.7-ish many series to be fair, averaging a 0.9, which is perfectly acceptable when you've got Nero and Attach and even Gio playing well. Now, would you want Purj to be at a 0.95? Sure, or even a 1.0 would be nice, but 0.9 average over the last few games, it is perfectly acceptable to be a respectable enough team if your other teammates are turning it around. And he does look more comfortable for sure on the SMG role, and apparently he's been doing lots of their communication as well. This, by the way, are their qualifiers upcoming, so they're 2-1 right now, and their qualifiers are very doable. I mean, have a look at this. Vegas play Boston, a team that's, I think on any day, Boston are beatable, really, and they can probably beat anyone at the same time. They kind of have that level of talent. It's a strange team. I mean, we saw them take down Toronto earlier in the season. But Vegas, okay, let's say they lose to Boston. They still play Thieves, Surge, who are terrible, and Ravens, who are also beatable, I would say. So Vegas are in a really nice spot here. They've started 2-1. You know, they could feasibly go like 6-1. I don't think they will. But, you know, let's say they go 2-2 over these series. You know, they're in 4-3, which is super respectable. Get 40 CDL points, go into the major. And who knows, we might get another Vegas versus like Toronto rematch. I don't think they're going to be quite good enough to really take it to them, especially when we get to LAN. But, you know, looking at the way their matches, you know, shape up, there's a realistic possibility that they go into the major as a pretty solid seed and, well, could even potentially take the fight further up than just that. So very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Just a quick comment here on the breakdowns. Team of the week. Thought this was interestingly put together. Confused in many ways where they're coming up with this one. I think Nero, for sure, I would have put in here. I think he was really good. I think Ghosty as well. I know that, you know, he was just such a monster in the series, and it was such a must-win series that I probably agree with this. Dashy was good as well, so I don't, you know, mind those picks. But I don't know why Linz is here, to be fair. Like, I rate Linz, you guys know that. But, I mean, come on, they got slammed this week, and Linz didn't have his best week ever. Snoopy did a number on them in that final series. And no New York Subliners players, despite a good week in beating FaZe. Not so sure about that either, but very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.